Race 1 at Silverstone's national circuit produced plenty of drama. Clark started on pole position. Opposition early on, though, came from Stephen Warburton, who qualified alongside him. Jerry Taylor headed the pack as they went round back into the third place. Behind him, though, there was a big sideways moment for Mike Seller. The championship runs in two classes. The Boxsters, which were battling furiously for second place, and behind them, the slower, older 924s. The fight for second place raged on. Jerry Taylor in 16 ahead of Stephen Warburton. With Taylor up to second, so Taylor's Foundry Motorsport 1-2. His team preparing the car that was leading in the hands of Dave Clark. Lower down the pack, Mike Seller was pretty busy trying to fend off the challenge of David Bierman. The two of them ran nose to tail through Copse Corner, up towards Maggots. Bierman looking for a way through on the inside. Eventually he made the move and was able to swoop through on the outside, heading into Beckett's. The 924s, though, were having plenty of fun. Mark McKenzie, the hotel chain owner, having a couple of spins. He was able to rejoin. As elsewhere in the 924 fight, Stephen Brown, the engineer, runner-up in the championship last year, was desperately trying to gain places. He did, he moved himself up the order, but sadly was a retirement before the end of the race. The Boxsters were soon in and among the traffic, working their way past the slower 924s. Warburton in third spot, doing his level best to stay on terms with the race leaders. There's another of the Boxsters in stride for Copse was that of Dave Hughes, the man who was third in last year's championship. He pointed himself in the right direction and rejoined, would finish in ninth spot. Up front, Dave Clark was untouchable. He ran out an easy winner, nearly 7 seconds clear of everybody else. Jerry Taylor making it a Taylor's Foundry Motorsport 1-2 in second spot, and Stephen Warburton coming home in third. Jason Flagg was on target to win in the 924s, but the battle for second went right down to the wire. Andrew Hannington was just ahead of Alfred Pleisinger, but he was able to wriggle away by in the last couple of corners, and the former Indonesian touring car racer squeezed through for second place. The gap between them at the end of the race being just a tenth of a second. So Dave Clark able to celebrate victory in round 1 of the championship. Jerry Taylor coming home behind him. Stephen Warburton third, and then Richard Starrin, former Volkswagen Racing Cup racer, fourth ahead of the Biermans. David ahead of John. In the 924 fight, Jason Flagg the victor there. And Flagg, having raced years ago with the HSCC, now very much a man to beat in 924 racing. Pleisinger second ahead of Hannington, with Adam Croft, Sean Siddall and Paul Bravo rounding out the top 6. The cars making their way to the grid then for the second race this weekend here at Silverstone in the Design911.com Porsche Championship. And it's Dave Clark who's going to line up on pole position. Jerry Taylor with him at the front of the grid. And then Stephen Warburton and Richard Starrin on the second row. It's going to be a big fight between the top 4 on the grid. But Dave Clark, very much the man to beat. Last year's champion. And the 41-year-old who began in Caterham racing many seasons ago has always been quick in sports cars, Caterhams, or even in GT cars. He had a spell briefly in things like Lister Storms and in Chrysler Vipers. There on the second row, Stephen Warburton, another vastly experienced driver, Formula First champion going back many years. And also a man to watch, Richard Starrin, former kart racer, came back a couple of seasons ago in the Volkswagen Racing Cup, went well, fell away from that last season, and has come into sports car racing instead. So up towards the end of the green flag lap, Dave Clark weaving around there, trying to put a bit of warmth into the tyres. Jerry Taylor, then Stephen Warburton, you see Richard Starrin is next up, and then the third row of the grid, David and John Bierman. The fourth row, number 40, Arjo Josh and the yellow car, the Mike Seller. And then behind them, you've got the Porsche 924s, with Jason Flagg being the best of them on the grid. And as they make their way up towards the grid, everybody starts together. Two classes, you've got the Boxsters as well as the 924s, but it's a combined race, so everybody goes from the grid at the same time. And as the field forms up then now, pole position, Dave Clark on the outside of the circuit for this race, the proper pole position on the Silverstone National Circuit. Jerry Taylor alongside him. Jerry Taylor, the former cycle racer, definitely a man to watch, having been quick in Caterhams and GT cars a few years back. Hasn't raced for a few seasons until last year when he was tempted back by the BRSCC's Porsche Championship. Nice full grid as well. The 924s, of course, you can trace back to 1978 when they had their very first one-make championship. That rather fizzled out, and it was picked up in the early 90s by the late Jeff May, run as a very successful one-make series for many years. And although the numbers have dwindled a little bit, they found a happy home combined with the Boxsters, and it's good to see more and more of the new shape Porsches coming out every season. So we're ready to go racing then. Grid forms, and the race is going to be over 20 minutes. Clark in the white car, Taylor in the red and white alongside him. Warburton's orange and black Boxster behind. Lights go red. When the lights go out, the race, round 2 of the championship, will get underway. Engine notes rising then as the drivers look toward the lighting gantry. Who is going to make the best start then? Dave Clark looking to try to make it a double here at Silverstone this weekend. Now the lights go red finally. And the lights go out, and Clark makes a very good start indeed from the outside of the front row, and he's got to make a good start from there because it's not the best line to be on. Heading down towards Copse Corner, Clark swoops across, takes the line then. In second spot behind him is Jerry Taylor. Richard Starrin goes third as the cars turn their way through Copse then for the first time. 18, Alfred Piesinger there goes through, and the company CEO, former Indonesian touring car racer, desperate to try and get a class win this time, but it's Clark who leads outright. Taylor second as they go to Beckett for the first time. Starrin third, and Warburton a bit slower out of the blocks, looking for a way past him as they head down towards Brooklands for the first time. Very wide indeed there goes Jason Flagg in his 924. Flagg having been victorious within the class in the first race, and now as they steam their way down towards Brooklands for the first time, you can see the way that Warburton is looking for a way there to try and move himself up into third spot, but Richard Starrin is keeping him at bay for the moment. Wide over the curb goes Starrin. Warburton tries for a gap on the inside. Stephen, an instructor at Silverstone, knows every inch of this circuit. He should know every possible overtaking place as well. Out of Brooklands, they come through Luffield. This is David Bierman's view. You can see the fight going on ahead of him. Bierman accelerates through Woodcote, grabs a gear, and goes down towards Copse Corner now. As up front, Dave Clark, he's just edging away a little bit. Jerry Taylor second, but then look at the fight that's going on for third place now. You've got there Richard Starrin defending from Stephen Warburton, and as they turn their way through Copse, there's another good battle building up here, look. Number 40 is Arjo Josh, Dave Hughes behind him, and Hughes was somebody who had a spin at Copse in the first race, but he's keeping out of trouble now. Mike Seller there in the yellow car, also working his way up towards Beckett. Through the hairpin they go, and then down towards Brooklands. But up front, Dave Clark is trying to build the lead, and very, very wide there, heading towards the curb, rattling over them. That's John Bierman. The fund manager gets back onto the circuit, albeit he will have lost a little bit of time as a consequence of that. Here's the fight then between Warburton and right on his tail there, Richard Starrin. So we've had that change for third place, in other words. Warburton has gone through. Stephen Warburton down towards Brooklands, uses a bit of the curb on the inside there. Starrin back to fourth now and trying to play catch-up once again. Richard Starrin very quick in karts a few years ago before he came back into racing in the Volkswagen Racing Cup, and then now into the Porsche Boxster class here on board with Bierman. Making his way up towards the line. He's losing touch just ever so slightly with that pack ahead is David Bierman. Grabs a gear, goes through Woodcote, down towards Copse now. There Dave Clark turns his way then through Copse. Jerry Taylor is staying with him. Dave Clark not getting away for the moment. And so Clark, the reigning champion, hangs on to the lead, but only just as they're going through. Number 31, John Bierman, the former MGF racer, back in racing after a few years away, and he's pretty busy at the moment, trying to attack and defend at the same time. Clark versus Taylor then, the two teammates in the Taylor's Foundry Motorsport run cars out of Beckett. Great noise these Boxsters make as well as they accelerate now down towards Brooklands. In third place, Stephen Warburton, and it's good to see desirable cars like this being able to be run at club level. Down they come into Brooklands. Good to see more and more of the Boxsters coming into this championship every year. More and more drivers realising that you can take a desirable sports car and race it cheaply. Off the road there, though, in his 924 is Andrew Hannington. He's gone way off at Beckett, turns the car around, finds the correct part of Silverstone. It can be a bit baffling if you go off now because there's so much extra tarmac around. Here's the replay, just locks up going into Beckett, goes straight on through the gravel, over the grass, takes his foot off the brake, aims for the tarmac, finds a bit of traction in the end, turns the car around. Could have been a big, big moment for Andrew Hannington. He's way off the circuit, but will get back on and should be able to work his way up a few places before the very end. Leaders come across the line. Clark versus Taylor then, but that gap is not really extending, as meantime in the 924 battle here, you can see the way that Mark Marshall is coming under pressure from number 10, and that's Mark McKenzie, the hotel chain owner, goes a little bit wide, and he in turn now has got Stephen Brown, the engineer, the runner-up in last year's 924 contest, right up behind him, and Brown goes wide, coming out of Luffield. Rattles his way over the curb, and now they sprint their way down towards Copse Corner. The 924s may not be as quick as the Boxsters, they may not be quite as young, but they still deliver very good racing. There are plenty of them around, there are loads of spare parts available for them as well, so they're a very good, cheap way of going motor racing now. Car number 10 then, Mark McKenzie, turns out of Copse, but right up behind him here, look, is Steve Brown, and Brown tries to make a move, going up towards Maggots. He's going to be on the outside there, but that, if he can stand his ground, will be the inside for Beckett. Does it work? Does it work? No, it doesn't. Has to slot back in behind. McKenzie moves across, takes the line for the corner. And ahead of the pair of them here, still number 2, Mark Marshall, going well. Steve Brown up a gear as he comes out of Beckett, and he gets a good run out of the corner there. See the bit of tubing on the left-hand side to get a bit more air into the cabin. He's up alongside, and this time he should gain a place. Yes, he does. He's gone ahead now. Mark McKenzie, down they come towards Brooklands, and that finally moves Steve Brown up one further spot. Out of Brooklands towards Luffield then, a pair of them running together. Steve Brown, the 36-year-old engineer, former 100cc kart racer a few years ago. Then he moved across into 924s, runner-up in the championship last year. Mark Mackenzie, only his second season of racing, having begun last year. And the hotelier, having dropped back behind the Flegg transport car. The company run by really the man to beat in the 924s, Jason Flegg, who's way out up front. Diving down towards Copse Corner they go. There you can see is number 60. Steve Brown accelerates his way now up through Copse Corner. Up to top gear, heads into the left-hander of Maggots, and he's starting to reduce this gap all the time. Look, there's another battle developing, just as there is in the boxers, because in this race, Dave Clark is not shaking off Jerry Taylor. The two immaculately presented cars coming across the line almost together now, and there's another boxer in grief at Brooklands. Number 40 has gone off the road there, that's Arja and Josh. And it's Dave Clark leading the way in the white Boxster as he comes now over the timing line, still being chased by Jerry Taylor, the man who prepares his car. And there, number 3 is the man who's leading the 924 element of this race, Jason Flegg, winner in the first race. And as he comes now out of Copse Corner, he's about to go a lap down because the quicker overall leading boxers are getting closer and closer to him all the time. This championship that initially was purely for the 924s, increasingly more and more boxers have arrived on the scene. The two classes sit very well together, and it proves that you can go Porsche racing on a budget. Plenty of boxers, plenty of 924s are still around, lots of spare parts available, and they're good, durable race cars. Dave Clark leads the way then in the white Boxster, but Jerry Taylor in the white over red car right up behind him, and there's more lappery coming up now because Martin Braybrook, renowned GT team owner for whom Dave Clark used to race many, many years ago, is lapped by the race leaders there. It was a Brookspeed Viper run by Martin Braybrook that won the British GT Championship a few seasons ago for James Gornall. In the meantime, the race leaders work their way out of Brooklands, down through Woodcote Corner, up towards the end of the lap. The race is a 20-minute race rather than a set number of laps here. And there's the leader, Dave Clark, then. He hasn't got it all his own way because Jerry Taylor is still this constant shadow behind him. But Dave Clark, very experienced driver, came into Caterham racing at the end of the 1990s and was bang on the pace in his first ever race meeting. Progressed rapidly up to GTs, then had a few years away to build up his business. But it's good to have him back in racing as Richard Starrin works his way up towards the end of the lap in 4th spot at the moment, Richard Starrin. Behind him is Mike Seller. The two of them working their way through traffic. Number 10, Mark Mackenzie, in the 924 goes through, and he's being lapped. And you've got Dave Hughes also there, the HR employment consultant, is tucked up along with them. And Dave Hughes there in 53 coming into Copse, a corner at which he had a spin in the first race of the weekend here at Silverstone. The national circuit that always lends itself to good racing. It's a perfect shape almost, this circuit, and of course it's very wide as well, which means you can overtake quite easily. And that's exactly what Dave Hughes wants to do now against Mike Seller. Into the braking area for Beckett's they come. Dave Hughes, 3rd in the championship last year, accelerates now through the right-hander and sprints off down towards the left at Brooklands. The Porsche 924s having their own battle, but increasingly as the race wears on, they're having to keep out of the way of the faster cars. So that on certain laps would impede them just slightly, and then diving up the inside, Hughes against Seller, and he takes the place coming into Brooklands. A big, big gap was afforded to Dave Hughes. He needed no second invitation, charges through on the inside, and so 53 Dave Hughes picks up the place. Behind them, having been lapped, is Mark Marshall, the man that works at Flegg Transport, and here fighting back is Mark Seller. He's alongside Dave Hughes on the inside, so the pair of them come over the line absolutely together, and Seller has got his nose in front on the inside. Richard Starring goes through ahead of them, but Seller now on the inside is going to be able to go through. I think, yes, he does, takes the place back on the inside there. Great move, and it worked for him. Another place picked off then by Mike Seller, but it's only in a sense retaking the place that he had half a lap ago. So status quo is now put back to how it was. And the battle continues with Dave Hughes looking for a way back ahead of the yellow and black car there just ahead of him. So Mike Seller gained a place, but that's because he lost it and he had to work hard to retake it. Dave Hughes wants to do exactly the same now. He had the place, he's lost out. Can he fight back? It was here coming down towards Brooklands that the move started a lap ago, but I would suggest he's not quite near enough this time. Heading down towards the braking area. Dave Hughes, the 34-year-old, trying to play catch-up now because Mike Seller has just been able to distance himself a little bit, and very deep there, very wide through Brooklands goes Hughes. That will just compromise him a little bit. 87 there, David Bierman, the company director, working his way through the 924s. David yet to win in this championship, and it looks as though he's going to be denied yet again here because he's not quite on the podium as yet. He's in 4th place there, going through number 3, which is the 924 Jason Flegg leading the class. Jason, who started many years ago racing with the HSCC, and then decided that instead of racing the 924 against other varied miscellaneous sports cars, he'd just go the one mate route, switched across to the BRSCC Championship, Dave Clark, meantime, leading the way. Is he edging clear of Jerry Taylor? Only just. If he is, it's by hundredths of a second a lap. Jerry Taylor, even though he can't get right onto the tail of Dave Clark, he's not falling too far back. Very evenly matched cars, these. They come out of the same workshop, and Dave Clark leads the way as they head up towards the end of the lap now. Stephen Warburton is not too far behind them either in third place. So it's the reigning champion Clark, ahead of former Caterham champion Taylor, and then Stephen Warburton, Formula First champion, went into national saloons, former Formula Palmer Audi champion. We've seen him racing in the British GT Championship in the GT3 class, the GT Cup class as was, and as the cars come out up towards the end of the lap, those three almost together, whereas next car through is David Bierman. He's a rather distant fourth, but Jason Flagg out on his own in the 924s, and it looks as though this is going to be a fairly easy class win for Jason. Scored victory in the first race, and it looks like he's going to do it again now. Now the 924 second place battle is shaping up. Look, because as they come now down towards Copse Corner, there they are, absolutely tied together. And the man that's fourth within the 924 division there, Adam Croft, the internet marketing manager, also going well. He was third in the 924 category last season, so that's another quick driver trying to work his way onto the tail of that leading group of cars. Number 8, Nick Hull, going through Brooklands. 77, the boxer of Stephen Boyles, there you can see. And then behind Boyles, you've got the race leader, Dave Clark, who's about to work his way through the traffic here. Stephen Boyles in his first season of racing. Number 77 about to go a lap down here. And then you've got Nick Hull, former Ginetta G20 racer and former 250cc kart racer in the green car, also about to be lapped by Dave Clark. Hull sits on the inside of the road. Clark has to find the way round on the longer outside line, which he does. He's got Jerry Taylor chasing on behind him as well. And those two now making their way up towards Copse. Taylor having to weave his way through the traffic there from the outside to the inside, trying to pick off the slower cars without losing too much time. This is Stephen Warburton's view now. Down through the gears into Beckett, but he's stuck in the traffic now because he's not just got the 924s, he's got the slower boxes to get past as well. 77 there, Stephen Boyles is going to be lapped. Nick Hull will be the next person to negotiate, and they're battling for 8th and 9th places anyway. Goes to show you how quick the three leading drivers are, lots of experience. And of course they're up against, in the main, amateur racers with limited experience, many rookies indeed, having only been recent converts to the joys of motor racing. Clock ticking away. We're about 2 minutes or so away from the end of the race now. They're going to squeeze in 2 more laps looking at this. Stephen Warburton turning his way out of Luffield, waiting for the road to straighten up ahead of him, then he can floor the throttle. That's what Dave Clark does now, coming up towards the end of the lap. Clock ticking, and the last lap board is there for him. Yes, so he's not quite got the time for 2 more laps, only for 1. It's going to be an 18-lap race like we had in the first one, as down towards Copse goes Clark. Last lap, then he turns his way through the right-hander, and so Dave Clark's on target seemingly now to do the double, because although Jerry Taylor is there or thereabouts, according to phrase, he is not near enough now to make a move. Through the left-hander at Maggots goes the leader. So Clark, BRDC member, BRDC badge proudly worn on the car, goes out of the hairpin, and now he sprints his way down towards Brooklands. Clark leading the way. Jerry Taylor good for second, and then it looks like Stephen Warburton's going to be third. Just a quick look at the 924s. Jason Flagg's ahead of Stephen Brown, ahead of Alfred Piesinger for third place. But Dave Clark really has been the man of the weekend, hasn't he? He's taken 2 pole positions, he's taken 2 wins. Fastest lap in race 1, and he's got the fastest lap set on the first flying lap of the race here in race 2. Game, set and match then to Dave Clark. Here he comes, up now through Luffield. Slower car almost getting in the way. Mark McKenzie at the last corner. Not what the overall leader needs, but he's going to be able to get past Mark McKenzie. Hotelier bails out of the way. Checkered flag at the ready. Superb, perfect weekend at Silverstone for Dave Clark, who comes across the line now to take the checkered flag to win. Second across the line is Jerry Taylor, but it's 2 out of 2 for Dave Clark. 2 wins, 2 poles, 2 fastest laps. Absolutely perfect job. Very well achieved by Clark. Second is Jerry Taylor coming across the line, and it's going to be Steve Warburton to take third. In the 924s, though, Jason Flagg is on target for a win. He's really been on his own for the bulk of the race, and here he comes then. The older 924s still able to deliver good, competitive, low-cost racing. And Jason Flagg is going to come through a winner. Stephen Brown's looking good for second place, and Alfred Piesinger for third. Adam Croft fourth then. But there, over the line, goes Jason Flagg, and it's been another very successful weekend for him as well. So across the line, Jason Flagg victorious, and in second place, Stephen Brown just has his nose in front of Alfred Piesinger when they come over the timing line. Adam Croft being fourth home of the 924s. But as far as the Boxsters are concerned, Dave Clark, the man of the weekend. A much, much smaller winning margin, though, this time, less than a second to Jerry Taylor. Stephen Warburton third ahead of David Bierman. Fifth is Richard Starrin this time around, and Mike Seller rounds out the top 6. But it really has this weekend been all about Dave Clark.